Hello, everyone. My name is Lynn McEntee. I'm your host of Spotlight on Community, a new community series hosted and sponsored through Moksha Canada Foundation. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Moksha Canada Foundation before we introduce our topic for this series this week. And it is Moksha Canada Foundation is excited to launch an online series. The purpose of this program is to raise awareness and find creative ways to address issues that affect our diverse communities across Canada. Moksha Canada Foundation is a registered non-for-profit community organization that works towards ensuring the well-being of individuals, families, and diverse communities in Canada through the provision of essential services. We at Moksha Canada, this is exciting. We at Moksha Canada believe in the philosophy of connect, create, and participate. I'm going to stop there. There's so much more about Moksha Canada I'd like to share with you, but I want to welcome our guest, Guofang, who is with us from British Columbia, and she'll be our language expert today. And we have Saidaltaf Patel, who'll be speaking to us about immigration law. Our focus for the first part of this will be focusing on language. So hello to our guests. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi there.
I'm Guofang. So can I share now?
Yes, sure. Please do.
Okay. So my name is Guofang. I'm a professor and Canada research chair from the University of British Columbia. I'm very happy to be here to share what I know about immigrants and how to make our community a welcome space for newcomers. That's my topic today.
It's wonderful to have you. We're very excited because Newcomers to Canada is a very broad, but it really does focus with the family and the role of the family in resettlement. So to have you as an expert guest today is very valuable for all of us, and maybe we'll learn some new things along the way for anyone who's never been aware of that. The importance of linking school, community, family, and partnerships and resources and newcomers.
Again, thank you for having me. So can I begin?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Okay, good. So, I want to make 3 points about how to make our community a welcoming space for newcomers. One is focus on education and racism elimination. Here, we include language education, prejudice reduction, and educator education and digital divide issues. The second point I want to make is that we need to have a whole family approach to integration, focus on adult, especially parents, language education and employment and social integration. Of course, of children, the same language and academic support and social integration. The third point probably will lead towards the next presentation is that we need a differentiated policy and practice for diversity. So I think the first task, we need to focus on education, including language education and racism elimination. So everybody knows that Canada is one of the world's best countries, most highly rated country for newcomers. And Canada's newcomers are very diverse, as we know. You can see from the most recent data, you can see that from the 2016 census of population, you can see that immigrants is now in one in 5 people in Canada is an immigrant. And many of them are second generation population, and visible minority population is over 22.3%. And just a little bit of the trend of the recent trend of the new immigration trend. For example, this is a pre-pandemic. Of course, last year it was affected a little bit, but you can see that in 2019, there's a record high of diverse population or immigrants coming to Canada, and mostly concentrated in Toronto, Vancouver, and Montreal. And these newcomers are very, very diverse. You can see that 5.8% of the newcomers are refugees. I want to point out the majority of the refugees came with no formal schooling, and a few with fewer with advanced degrees. And we also have 65% of them are in what we call economic class. Those typically have advanced degrees and education. and the 30% of the newcomers came as a family class. So you can see that it's very, very diverse. But this diverse population also faced some very significant challenges in education and integration. Very obviously, is the first challenge is linguistic and a cultural challenge. So they're coming into a new country and learning a new language. For refugee students or children in schools, there's also added layer of academic challenge, especially for refugee students who had no formal schooling or what we call interrupted schooling because of their prior situation. And another challenge that we see in the schools are deficit views about the newcomers. Among immigrants, for example, if you speak English as an accent or you're in English as second language class as kids, English as a second language is always seen as a stigma. I have heard different accounts of kids want to get out of ESL or not wanting to be labeled ESL. And there are reports or growing reports of ethnic identity as a threat. For example, our Muslim communities, Asian communities are increasingly targeted as the racism attack. So I just cite one school counselor's recent remarks say, and like it or not, there's still racism that exists in our school system. For refugees, there's also added more challenges, especially in resource access. I will go into, for example, food, technology, education, and the social challenges. And many refugees, I want to mention, is that also have, especially students in the schools, have social emotional challenges because of their traumatic experiences. All this aspect will affect their education and integration. So I want to add a little bit of this, give you a sense of what refugee students may feel like in school in terms of academic and social emotional challenges. And this is actually from my own research. This is from teachers describing the newcomers. In the first one, I will just read, say, this teacher says, they have never been to school. They are not used to any kind of school setting. And the new librarian, also, we got a new librarian now. They are not used to school. They cannot walk down the hall in the beginning. So this is just a special case. Another challenge is not just that getting used to school setting, but also getting used to the academic content learning in English. So this another teacher said, they don't know the contents in English. Some refugee students have no idea what the content is. And other things they also have access in inequity is don't have any access to sports or extra curriculum outside school. I'm not going to read this whole passage from the teacher, but the main point is that that refugee students and their parents actually want to do well, but there are many challenges. For example, this parent want to go to parent conferences in school, but have no transportation and they have no money. So they sold all their jewelry and everything so that they can take a taxi to parents' night. So you can see that they have determination, but there are some serious challenges. The last quote here is about some students came with trauma. So some have relatives killed or murdered permanently. I have those kids who have seen their parents killed so young. So in the beginning with those kids, they came into class, put their heads down, they cannot read or say anything. So this is very incredibly complex in terms of some students' academic, social, emotional challenges that require very serious support, both inside school and outside in their home context. And I want to actually mention about the racism. Somehow this this page didn't display very properly, but in my original PowerPoint, something happened to it. Maybe see. No. Okay. So it's talk about how prevalent that racism is in our school system. The first report that's missing from my PowerPoint is a report from New Brunswick, where many refugees and immigrant students were surveyed, and they found that racism is prevalent every day in school. So many of the times that it came from educators who are supposed to educate them. So and another issue is the increasing anti-Asian racism here. You can see that just 2 days ago in Washington Post, there was a report that Asian American students are missing from classrooms because they are afraid to be targeted attack against them. So just to sum up that by a blog post by Athena Chan in 2020 said racism was so prevalent at school, we barely spoke of it to each other. So this is the status of what newcomers might encounter when they go to school. So in a sense that you can see that we need to focus on education and racism elimination. I believe the second aspect we need to work on is the whole family approach. In the first task, I focused mostly on students' challenges, but in the second one, I want to focus on more adult challenges. I want to draw your attention to adult newcomer status in the labor market, especially in Canadian context. This is actually very common, not just in Canada, but also around the world in many developed countries. For example, in a study that back in 2015, new immigrants on average obtained no return to their pre-immigration labor experience. So whether you were a doctor, lawyer prior to immigration, it really didn't matter. So, but in the labor market, male immigrants actually are doing a little better. Not all male immigrants, but only male immigrants with substantial English proficiency had a higher matching rate in terms of the occupation they receive they receive any return on such experiences. So in a sense that most of their pre-immigration labor market experiences or education background is often not portable, as we discussed earlier. So
Guofang, is this a good time to ask any questions maybe from Sunil or Altaf? I know Sunil had put up his hand. Yeah.
Sorry, so that's great. Yes.
Oh, yep. There it goes. Sunil, did you have a question?
I just have a question. Like the part one, it was saying about the racism, about the East Asian and some other. But it happened with everybody. All the cultures, all the religions. It depends on the timing of something happened, then people start doing teasing or bullying, and racism starts for that culture, like one community. So it's not for like one community is. How are we going to change that? Like we teach our kids and we teach our members and like talk like respect each other, like whatever we can. So as per your advice, what do you think? How we can fix? We cannot fix overnight, I know, but how we can do the things to fix these things, like for whole as a whole.
Yeah, so I agree with you. Unfortunately, my PowerPoint was showing only the Asian anti-Asian racism, but the others are from other like the reports. This includes all the ethnic minority students. So I believe there are many ways to do it. One is to have education. I think many of our educators have good intentions. Sometimes you have implicit bias or and attitude that may not be intentional or they're not conscious. So we need to have this kind of education. And the good news is that some school districts, especially in the context of Vancouver, some school districts start to have anti-racism education among faculty. So that's a good start. And I also think that there needs to be a system-wide system includes the school districts, also each school as a system to address those issues. I know that some schools in the past, they said everybody's the same, but the thing is we do have differences, so we're not the same. So sometimes the approach taken may not even help the issue, but more disguise the issues. So I believe also that kids need to be educated on both sides, like on the receivers or the doers side. That both need to have more awareness from early. If we start in early childhood to have more critical perspectives on education, we may in long term help reduce the issues.
I just going to ask one more thing, adding to this one, that I think first I think that this racism thing is like we have to start from our own, like start from the home, then to the kids, then outside.
Yeah.
Because I know in the school they have all the system. Yes, no racism, no bullying, but still it happens.
Yeah.
That's what I'm asking. Like how we can solve that problem, because the rules are there, the human rights are there, awareness is not there. People don't know a lot of things about the human rights, a lot of things about this. You know, like if somebody's talking somebody like in a different manner, maybe it's a bullying. Maybe some people don't understand, you know, so that's what I'm asking.
Like in terms of accountability and such? Yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the issues is that a lot of communities, ethnic communities and racial minorities and the majority group are living and working on what I call parallel lines. They don't intersect. When you don't know each other on a personal level, the kind of stereotypes, racism or prejudices start to be passed on. So I think in communities, we should encourage more intercultural competence, where people actually interact genuinely with each other across racial groups. And this way we can actually get to know each other on a more authentic personal level, rather than just watching each other from a distance. So I think that maybe your foundation and many community organizations can facilitate this kind of interaction opportunities where we genuinely learn each other's perspectives and forge friendships even. And so I think that can raise awareness. So I think that some of the traditional approaches, probably like offering workshops or just to have those kind of talk, is not going to change the scenario, but or the status quo. But I think much more creative solutions that encourage more what I call cultural reciprocity would work better in the long run.
Yeah, any question, Altaf?
So, Doctor, you just said, I mean, I understand the racism exists in our society, whether we accept or not. I mean, denial is not the cure for it. But as per your research, which culture is most vulnerable or most targeted as per your research?
It's a great question.
I think that this is very, it's tied to the historical and the political context, right? So I think racism has been existing for a long, long time in history. So it's not a new thing, right? So for example, the indigenous people have been experiencing, systemic racism. So it has been a long, long time in the Canadian history, and newcomers coming, then added different layers of racism in the society. So it's really hard to really rank which group is most vulnerable. However, because of the Black Lives Matter movement, people's awareness of the racism against Blacks around the world, especially in the US and in Canada, it make the issue more pronounced, last year, right? And then because of the pandemic recently, and daily you can see the newspapers are reporting anti-Asian racism, right now, every day. So you can see that in this particular historic time, certain groups are more, the racism against certain groups are more pronounced than the other groups. But that does mean the other groups don't experience racism. In a little bit, I'm going to share the refugee responses in terms of what they experience. For example, women, refugee women who wear hijab, right? Hijab, they are more likely to be experience verbal attacks in public, right? So they're that as this Athena Chan talked about, racism is very prevalent right now. If I change the sentences, that racism is prevalent everywhere, right? So, but certain groups' vulnerability will be more noticeable during certain historic times and political times.
Yeah, interesting.
That's, I think, right. My understanding is the racism is there because of the ignorance of other cultures, right? So I think government should do more programs so different cultures can come forward and give awareness about their own culture. And as community, we should have more programs on this. That's what my understanding is.
Yeah.
So it really, and starting at birth, really, and sort of speaking to what I think Sunil had mentioned earlier as well, and yourself, Altaf, again, it starts at the very core of our early childhood education, right? And it can be just that, making change, right? Sorry, Guofang?
Oh, I was going to share a story. I don't remember detail, but it's in Toronto, a shop owner or businessman was racially attacked by a stranger, a white guy from Wisconsin. I remember the story. It was in the Globe and Mail. So his reaction was that, so instead of being angry, he invited the guy to get to know him and his community to Toronto, invited him to the baseball games, and then they become the best friends. And the guy totally changed his attitude from racism and hatred to genuine friendship. And he actually issued an apology to the businessman and to the community for his words, action, for his ignorance. So I think we need a more story like that, or more sort of humanizing approach like that, to really dismantle this kind of persistent racism.
We have a question from one of our guests. What is your take on racial microaggression?
My take, I think that I spoke about this topic on another occasion. I think as racial minorities, first of all, we need to really educate ourselves. What are considered, or what are racial microaggressions, right? So without knowing those, you might just have a feeling, but you don't know. Sometimes people make comment, say, wow, you speak a really good English, or you know, where did you come from, for, you know, people who were born in Canada, right? So those are racial microaggressions that hurt you or harm your emotions, but you may not recognize it. So I think they kind of, we need to actually actively educate ourselves about what are the sort of what kind of things are considered microaggressions. Secondly, I think we also need to educate ourselves on how do you react to those. I think that my advice may be more confusion-like. I think we need to pick our battles, right? Not in some situations, we do need to be willing to stand up for ourselves and think that this is not okay. In other situations, maybe take more educating the other person approach, and in a more friendly way, and so that we can achieve what we want to achieve, this kind of reciprocity in terms of learning. So I think that it's first of all, we need to really educate ourselves. We have to be aware of this, what are the situations, remarks, actions that are considered microaggression. Also, we need to have some really learn some strategies on how to combat those.
Absolutely. Having taught newcomers and refugees myself, Guofang, I totally appreciate where you're going with the conversation and have experienced that very much so. And yeah, thank you very much for being our expert today and sharing this with people who our public who may not have the knowledge of that. We have thank you from Anu for answering her question, she said. Yep, go ahead. And if there's anything, yeah, feel free to carry on.
Okay, good. So I think the second one, I'm going to talk about how to support newcomer adults, because only adults are supported and they can better support the children. I think that's why I said we need a whole family approach to integration. And then we just talk about how many of the newcomers' prior experiences were not really valued or portable to the new country. So because I'm particularly focused on language, so I look at the research on adult language programs, and some of you know that Canada and many other countries have provided language education for newcomers. However, the quality of, or the approach, orientation of the programs sometimes are not really well aligned with their employment needs. Many of them, the research has found that the fast employment ethos is really reflected in the language education programs. For example, in Canada Link, and then the language, another language program that later for employment. So they focus on more discrete elements of very basic survival, what we call survival English, and very one of the interesting aspects of the program is always focus on reducing immigrants' accent and anglicizing their names and to conform to the image of the ideal Canadian employee. This is very heavily criticized. What this does is that, you know, a lot of adults probably come to speak English at this age, probably will never be able to get rid of their accent. Therefore, they will forever be seen as foreigners. And many of them have used their names for a long time. All of a sudden, they have to become George or Nancy, and it's just that to try to conform to this mainstream identity. So in this way, it creates a atmosphere of fear, hostility, and racism, right? Or linguicism in a sense. So what is this? What is because of their focus on survival English? So many of the newcomers are only employed in entry-level jobs. You can see that heavily. This is a very small sample, by the way, for this very constant. I shouldn't say small company. It's actually not small, but for this group, is 42% entry-level jobs, and the other 31 is technical skilled trades. Still, English language ability was positively associated with employment outcome. So if you only teach them survival English, they will not be able to, or French, they will not be able to obtain higher level jobs. So this is another survey done by BC government, and when they were asked, so what are the difficulties? Well, many of the difficulties, the top difficulties, language barriers, of course, for many families, time constraints and lack of Canadian experiences. So then they won't be able to find jobs. So again, language is really, really important for them to get the kind of employment they want.
So a question from Sunil. Go ahead, Sunil.
Sorry, I have a question
Yeah.
about that. Like when people apply to come to Canada as an immigrant,
Mm-hmm.
they have to study whatever, they have to show their degrees and all the stuff,
Mm-hmm.
all the paperwork requirement from the Immigration Canada. And they say, yeah, very good, you're good, you come, we want you. So when they come here, they don't get a jobs, like whatever, if somebody's just saying example, just somebody's a doctor, like in their country, and they apply and they say, yes, you're coming for the better future, Canada, come to Canada. When they come, they sell everything, all the property, everything, their hard, the whole life savings, they bring it to Canada. And they have to go from like, I think at least half of the way down, like they have to study again to get, all these like schools and stuff, certifications. And why don't they do before they come here, so they don't have to waste their 1 or 2 years of life doing the small jobs and all that stuff, what they never did in their life, wherever they're coming from. You know what I'm saying? Why there's a difference? Like when you apply, everything good. When you come here, okay, you have to wait 2 years to get the certification. So that's what my problem is, like, why? Or English is a second language, whatever. Why don't they do all the exams and everything before everything is there? Then why there's a problem? Like, why they're looking for experience when you're already getting the immigration because of your, education? So anybody can give me the answer. I just want to ask like this question in my mind. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. Anyone want to jump in there? Guofang or Tough? Okay.
I think.
Thank you for.
Sunil's question is valid question, but I think, in my opinion, the government just sets criteria for immigration, right? So they set criteria like education, language ability, and everything. But when the newcomer comes in Canada, there are different bodies, regulated bodies for each profession, right? If the profession is regulated, the government has established bodies for that. And those bodies set different criteria than the immigration criteria to have them into the profession. So that's the problem, I believe.
So you have a lot of qualified people out there just waiting in the system, not being able to use their resource that they came here with.
You see a lot of doctors, a lot of engineers that are driving taxis or security. Like,
oh yeah, several degrees.
Job. I'm not saying any job is low, but why don't they get into the same what they have education? Why they have to go down to survive? And they're coming and they're saying, oh, we're short of doctors. So a lot of doctors are applying all over the world, and when they come here, half of them they can be a doctor because the qualification, this and that. They should be checking all these things before, so people don't have to waste their like beginning, life a couple of years in the beginning, working hard, and then they have to give up on their, doctors, and they become taxi drivers or something else, whatever. That's what I was thinking.
In terms of the support in the community, Guofang, and resources for families and such, what's your take on that? I know we're doing access to inequality. What is your take on that for newcomers and that experience?
I think that first that we know there's a need, and the communities sometimes are really bounded by a lot of rules, regulations, or like. So we need policymakers to have more kind of system-wide thinking on allocating resources. So a lot of times the community members are better at solving problems than some of the policies, but policies, if we have a policy in place, then it's more effective. For example, this technology access issue, right? So we have a lot of the old computers that people recycle and never use. So recently, NBC reported that two college students started a community initiative where they refurbish some of the old computers and distribute to those vulnerable who need, or the students who need a computer to do online learning. So I think that those are the kind of creative solutions to those problems, in addition to probably some resources can be allocated to address those needs, right? So I think that it's not an easy solution. We know that the surveys I'm presenting here really shows a sort of digital divide still exists in our communities. And just today, my students from UConn talk about many of their students don't have access to the internet, so they cannot use the kind of technology, and then internet there is very expensive. So it's not just for the newcomers, but also for remote communities, right? There's this digital divide. So we do in this day of age, is really, sometimes we think this digital divide is over, but it's not. So I think we can address it from multi-levels. So it's not an easy solution, but we need policymakers or community shakers to address those issues creatively.
Guofang, you had said something about needing a bat and a ball in one of your presentations that you did. Could you talk about that in this case and how it correlates?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. In one of your presentations, you had said you need a bat and a ball to be able to be level the playing field, right?
Yeah.
And yeah, could you speak to that in this situation? To how do we level the playing field in terms of linguistic access and resources in our family to have access to the technology? Yeah. Yeah,
I think that sometimes that I'm not a policymaker, so I don't know how they allocate money. So in sometimes that the ball is more like providing what they need, right? So they sort of provide the bad part is for people actually to get moving and some action. So we need to really force them, the policymakers, to say, well, if you have this, I think some budget, maybe make it a budget item in the budget for the newcomers, right? Say those refugees who came with very little resources, and say, well, we do have some computers or some funds, and maybe we can provide those kids with basic learning needs, right? Or learning equipment, so that they can actually take part in access to learning. So so I think this kind of, again, we need people who are in a power position to be able to do that, and of course community can support that as well, but we need people who take that initiative to address those issues, make that a part of their agenda or budget. And so that's my take.
Yeah, for sure. They put the resources into the training of our community members, whether it start very young, whether it be our teachers in the education system, whatever, across the resources of our community, put the money into that. If we have to mandate it, if you will, it should really come from the heart, right? It should really be the core of who we are as human beings. But if we have to mandate it in some way, shape, or form, then make sure we put the resources into it, because in the end, it is the resource of our community that will build. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk as an immigrant woman, I'm very attuned to gender gaps. I'm presenting some of the older data plus the newer data. So you will see that there historically gender has been an issue. Gender gap has been an issue in newcomers' earnings, their lives. So this is actually very glooming. So you can see that immigrant women in Canada, this is 2009 data, are twice more likely not to know the English language in comparison to their male counterparts. And of course, this really affects their job possibility, right? And also among the newcomer, the immigrant women, 70% of them actually are unable to speak English even after 5 years of their arrival to Canada. This is very, very high, right? And of course, if you have very big gap in English language proficiency, and English language proficiency is really positively associated with job, the employment, then you can see that there's also a wage gap, okay? And back in 2006, the average wage gap between immigrant women and men is $257, okay? But this is comparing between immigrant women and men. And we know that immigrant men probably will be lower than the mainstream people, right? So the gap, if you compare immigrant women and white women, they're probably even higher, right? So, and this is another aspect that I was mentioning before, so that there's the gender gaps also refers to the racism, the attacks that women receive. Women are more likely to be attacked, and so like here, this is very recent data, talking about Muslim refugees population, where women who wear hijab were likely to report verbal abuse in public spaces. So this is gender gap, and this comes to very recent. This is a 2020 report from Public Policy Forum, and I just talk about newcomers under employment. We just discussed very extensively, and I actually just copied their key takeaways from their report. One, the first is again follow from the previous slide, is the highest, the power and earning penalty is highest for racialized women. Okay, so look, if we compare, this is more for more educated population, right? So in corporate leadership roles, white women outnumber racialized women by 17-1, okay? So, and then this is more leadership role, and then management force. So like see the racialized women only represent 6.4% of the management workforce. But they are actually, as a whole, they are 10.5% of the overall workforce. The second point related to the one question just raised, why some highly trained professionals come to Canada not getting employed in the profession they were trained. So the second point is that it has to do with Canadian immigration policy, where they encourage increasingly accepting highly skilled immigrants. But then employers are looking for less skilled workers, right? So you have policy, they have all this credentials they need to provide in order to come, but then they're not matched by employers who may look for less skilled workers, or looking less skilled workers probably mean less pay, right? It didn't explicitly say that, but I think this is a positive association there. So there's a policy and a practice sort of gap where policy emphasizes on skilled and experienced immigrants, but then this policy actually lead to underutilization of skills for highly educated immigrants. But the last one is that Canada also encouraged quite a large number of entrepreneurship and the class of immigration, but then said it actually isn't a solution for everyone. So it's not really working for most people, right? Not everybody has that much wealth. So it's again, it's policy and a practice gap. So I'm going to give you a sense of how how immigrants are underemployed, or there's employment gap. This is also from the recent data from Statistic Canada. So I'm going to read the statistic. Among those employed in 2006, this is the most recent, I think, data they have in this report, is that 62% of the Canadian-born were working in the regulated profession for which they trained, compared to only 24% of foreign educated immigrants. So that answers the question why so many of them are not really working in their trained profession, because there's a systemic barrier there, and you can see only 24% of them, so the majority of them are not getting the kind of job they were supposed to get. So the chart on the right tells you the percentage of in different professions, in terms of the professions, and the comparison between Canadian-born and foreign educated immigrants. So you can see the contrast quite striking. And since we have a lawyer here, if you look at law at the bottom, Canadian-born lawyers, 69% are most likely to be employed. However, only 12% if you're a foreign educated lawyer. So I'm really applaud our lawyer here. You're like the precious 12%. So this is very striking, right? So any questions?
Questions, Altaf?
I think we lost Sunil.
He should be back in just a moment. We have Anu, but any questions from you, Altaf?
No, not at this point.
Okay, I was actually just commenting on this because I'm looking at it's 2006, and I know like even in the 90s, it seemed to be medical workers that we spoke of before we started recording the show. And how has that changed? Do we know from 2006 to 2021? What are, is that, are we finding that more people are becoming employed in as, 2010, 2015, 2020? Anyone
I don't
know?
have the recent data, but judging by our social progress, I highly doubt it.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, thank you for that.
Yeah. So, so this comes to my part where I think we, building on the first 2 points, we should have differentiated policies and practices. So first I want to talk about we should have targeted policies. You can see the language education, language issue is so central to newcomers' social and economic integration. So we should have targeted language education policies for both K-12 immigrant kids, newcomer kids, and adults. Particular adults, I think we need to really provide long-term language support, not just for the first 6 months, right? Short term, because on survival English, we need to really teach them not move beyond the survival level to more advanced language proficiency so that they can get the jobs they deserve. Second, I think that it's very obvious that newcomer immigrant women are are the most vulnerable group among the newcomers. So we really need policies to support women in women's integration in in terms of language, employment, and racism against them, and also very policies to really level the gender gap, right, in wages, in their employment, in kind of services that they need to receive. Of course, a lot of times, like you can see the gap between the government policy for skilled workers and then the striking underemployment for newcomers, especially professionals. We do need policies to provide, to support equal employment opportunities, right? So I think one of the key issues here is to have a mechanism there to recognize immigrants or newcomers' prior experiences and credentials, and not like only so that more than 24% of them will be able to find the jobs they have been trained. So I think that we need also community practices. I do think that if our foundation can, and now or in the future, we need to provide more resources and programs for immigrant and refugee women. And this is a part that I think they're consistently falling through the cracks in the immigration system. I do think we need to provide more family-based programs. For example, there are a lot of successful family literacy programs where mothers or even fathers and children learn language together, and both fostering this family time also encourage language learning at the same time. So I think those programs are really fantastic. More of them should be provided, especially for mothers and their children.
Guofang, I actually ran a Head Start program for children, and I wanted to speak to that because I learned so much in that program. We started with 0 volunteers, 0 families, and 0 staff. And we ended with 1 staff, and we grew to this nationally recognized program that people wanted to be a part of. Like 50 volunteers per school term, because it was a family-based newcomer language program. And it really did honor the life skills and education that people had arrived with. And it was just so fantastic. And it just flourished so much. It was wonderful when you can get things like that going and get those resources and supports in the community.
Yeah. I think there are many successful programs now out there. So thank you for sharing. I think we need more of those programs to support immigrant women, especially with young children, early, right? So that they can gain the language skills and eventually find employment, right? So.
And then some speaking 2, 3, 4 languages, right?
Yeah.
In many cases, and that's to be honored as well too. So yeah, it's awesome. It's very cool. Yeah.
The next thing I think we need to work on, I think this is less attended to in our policy and in our education system, is employer education, right? A lot of times that the unequal employment opportunities, really the employers are the gatekeepers. So we need to have employer education in terms how to reduce racism, prejudice reduction, and how to provide equal or welcoming and social justice-oriented workspace, right? So I think this part is huge. I don't see a lot going on in this aspect. And finally, I want to say that we need to have more social programs, social cultural program for, as I mentioned earlier, intercultural competence and intercultural mingling, where we can have authentic cultural reciprocity among different ethnic or racialized minority groups, so that we can achieve that kind of social the social cultural understanding of each other. And I think that long term, that will actually work better than to eliminate some of the stereotypes, racism, and biases, I think. So I want to quote, to end by a quote by Ahmed Hassan, who the Canadian Minister of Immigration. He said back in 2017, he said that in Canada, immigration was a key tool for economic growth and nation building, and immigrants have has made very substantial contributions to our economic growth, our prosperity, and to our social and cultural mosaic. So I think that because of this, we all need to work together towards making our community a welcoming space for newcomers. It's our obligation. So thank you. And if you have any questions, comments, we can continue the discussion. And here's my email here. And
that's great. That's awesome. Questions, we'll open it up to our guests attending. Yeah, anything from you, Altaf?
No, thank you. I would like to add one comment, like as Doctor said, there must be awareness to the employers, right? Law Society of Ontario, I'm talking about the legal profession. Law Society of Ontario insists more to include diverse background in the law firms. And Law Society wants every firm or every lawyers to sign a declaration that they would include the more diverse people in their workplace. So I think that's one of the great initiatives by Law Society of Ontario, but I think there must be some more awareness to the employers.
Yeah, one thing I didn't talk here is the promotion in the workplace, right? That's for first of all, we have issues of getting in the door. Once you get in the door, the promotion is another issue. Racial minority employees are less likely to be promoted to top positions. In another position, I actually have data to show that, especially among some of the Asian communities. There are studies in the Bay Area where they have those high-tech companies, and then you can see that who are the most promoted: white men and white female, and then Asians and other racial minority are at the bottom. So it's not just I think it's this first step is for employers to open their doors to provide equal opportunity, so racial minorities have a chance to get employed. But the second layer of the issue is that is the fair treatment of those who are in the workforce.
Well said, Guofang. Anu, do you have any questions at all before we wrap up?
No, just a comment. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yes, wonderfully. Yep.
Okay, excellent session by Guofang. Thank you so much, and wonderful insights by Mr. Patel as well. I think just a comment there. I think it's also very important that all these different sectors, whether it's education, health, social services, immigration, everybody is doing a lot of work, I guess, in their respective silos. So it's very important that we need to come together. So integration of all these sectors is very important when it comes to addressing racism, discrimination, or issues related to immigrants and newcomers. So I think just a comment there, Yeah.
No, for sure. Stepping outside the silo for sure and opening it up. Yeah. Sunil, did you want to add anything in? Thank you, Anu. Thank you. No, here, good to go. Well, we have just been thrilled to have you here today. I think we'll probably wrap up our session, and thank you to our guests, Guofang. I really would love to connect with you again beyond this show today. I'll definitely reach out to you by email, and I want to thank you very, very much for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me. A great discussion today. Thank you for the great questions.
I just want to ask you, if you don't mind, Doctor, if you can send some links about whatever the topics we talk about to us, and we can put it on our website and share with other people who did not watch right now, or they can get access anytime from there.
Oh, thank you so much, Sunil. I appreciate that.
Okay. Yeah,
Um,
sure. I will do that.
That's awesome. And that's what Moksha Canada Foundation is about. It's about bringing people together, bridging communities, and raising awareness and knowledge. So we're very excited for Spotlight on Community and for this show and all of our upcoming shows to share expertise and pass on knowledge and shine light. Thank you so much for being with us. My name is Lynn McEntee, Spotlight on Community. Goodbye to
Thank
our
you.
guests.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.